Welcome to the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy podcast. My name is Wanaka Oberhuber, and my guest today is Ann Hince. Hi.
Hi. Hi. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, I prepared some questions for Ann, and she will read them out loud and then answer them for this time. So let's go.
Okay. So the first question was, how did you get to the view you have about the world now? So that's really my story. My story started with a lot of trauma in childhood. I was adopted into well, actually, even before that, I was born with my right foot up against my right shin. So the first 6 weeks of my life were physical therapy. And then I was adopted into a family where they already had one adopted child and they had adopted a second child, a little girl, and they had her for 6 months. And then the birth mother reclaimed her. So I was the replacement for that one baby. So my family that I was adopted into had trauma. So that obviously got stored in me because it goes into the subconscious mind. So that was my early days. And then I was sent to a boys' boarding school. I was actually the first girl boarder at a boys' boarding school. So that was a huge amount of trauma when the age of like 9 to 11. And then in my teenage years, both of my parents became alcoholics. And my dad had anger issues. So I kind of shut myself down. I almost stopped talking because it was easier not to say anything because my ideas about anything were always wrong. So it was easier not to give my opinion. And then when I was 19, one morning I woke up and found my mother dead in the bathroom on the floor. And so that was a huge trauma, but I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't even know there was any such thing as therapy at that point. So I just carried on with life because that's what we'd always done. And it wasn't until I was in my late 30s and I had a kind of business altercation with a couple of other mothers at my boys' school. And my mind just started tumbling out of control. It just went over and over and over what had happened. And I couldn't sleep for days. And that was the first inkling that I had that maybe that reminded me of something with my dad, because they were very self-confident authority type figures in my mind. And they told me I'd done something wrong, even though I didn't think I'd done something wrong. And so that was kind of eye-opening. And then it was kind of in that time frame, a little bit after that, that I went to a doctor's appointment. I don't remember why I went there, but the doctor could tell that I was more stressed than I should be in the situation I was in. I was a stay-at-home mother with 2 young boys, so it shouldn't have been too stressful. So he asked me on a 0 through 10 what my stress level was, and it was an 8 out of 10. And then he asked me why. And that's when I knew it was my mother's death, because the tears from that event, which was now 2 decades earlier, were still just under the surface. So he used this technique with me. It's called EFT, which is short for emotional freedom technique. And it's also called tapping because we tap on different parts of the body. He used it with me about my mother's death for about 15 minutes. And I walked away from that appointment being able to tell the story of her death in my mind without the emotions there. And it felt like such a huge shift for me. And it was the first realization I had that emotions are stored physically in the body and that we can release them. So I have an engineering background. I was a software engineer early on, and I like to know things work. So I wanted to know that wasn't just a one-off, it wasn't a fluke. So when I went home, I actually learned how to use the technique. And we had a 17-year-old cat at home that we had been told needed daily saline shots, like injections of saline solution. And I hate shots. And so the first time I gave him a shot, my hand was shaking so much. It was almost dangerous. And I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it every day. So I thought this is a great test case. So I just tapped about it. I tapped about my fear of the injection, my fear of hurting my cat, my hand shaking, and I tapped about my memories around injections from my childhood. And the next day, when I went to give him the shot, the needle just slid right in and my hand was totally calm, absolutely peaceful. And that's when I knew that this technique is deceptively powerful. It doesn't look like it's doing much, but it just released all that fear I had had the day before, and it was totally gone. So that's when I started using this technique every day. Started noticing when I felt emotional, and I would tap the emotions out. And I found my mind becoming peaceful. And that was my goal. I really, really wanted inner peace. So as time went on, I wanted more. So I thought, well, I'd heard of this technique where you could write down every emotion, every trauma from childhood. So that's what I did. I wrote down on several pieces of paper every emotional memory I could think of from earlier in my life. And I tapped through them one each day for about an hour to an hour and a half each evening until they were all gone. And my mind was becoming quiet. I remember opening the kitchen door one morning and just thinking that it feels like I'm living in a different reality, because my mind, which used to be so busy and critical, it wasn't anymore. It was quiet. And that's when I realized that those voices, the words that I had been using in my mind, the ones I criticized myself with and judged other people with, they were my dad's words that I had programmed into myself in childhood, and they just replayed in my mind. So it was really, really nice that they were gone. So that was the first step on my journey. And I realized that EFT is actually opening up the subconscious mind. So I started to become aware of my emotions because I hadn't been aware of them before. I'd suppressed everything. So on a day-to-day basis, I started to be aware of my emotions, but then underneath the emotions are a set of physical sensations. So we use the words sadness or anger or frustration, but what we're really describing is a set of physical sensations. We're holding ourselves tight somewhere. So imagine you're feeling frustrated. I can feel it right now. I can feel that tension in my solar plexus. So we kind of dissociate from that in childhood. We start using the words instead of feeling the feelings. So at this point, I actually started to feel the feelings. Instead of tapping, I would now hold my focused awareness or my focused attention on those physical sensations. And when I did it for long enough, there would be a shift. It would let go. So then I would think that thought again that had those emotions, feel those physical sensations again, and it would release. So I would do it over and over again. So now I've kind of moved past my childhood traumas. So what I would do is I would lie on the sofa and I would bring collective traumas to mind, like 9/11. I was in the Loma Prieta earthquake in California. I would bring those memories to mind, feel all those physical sensations inside of me, hold my awareness on them, and they would release. And I'd do it again and again with the same thought, the same memory, until they were free. And then they just become words, they just become a story, and they have no more charge behind them. So that was kind of the second step on my journey. And then as I was going through this process, well, one thing I mentioned here, since this is kind of a Course in Miracles group, is during this time frame when I was lying on the sofa, feeling these collective traumas, I actually started to feel electric currents inside of me. And I was actually in a Course in Miracles group at the time. And this is when I got a deeper understanding of what's inside of us, that it's all inside of us. It's not outside of us. But at one point during this phase, I realized after I released the tension from something, I could keep my awareness inside of my body. And I had never heard of that before. I didn't really know what I was doing. And the only way I can kind of explain it to you is that if you have a toothache or a headache or a stomach ache, you can pinpoint with your mind where that ache is coming from. But once the ache is gone, you can no longer focus on it. You can't put your awareness back inside to where that ache was. I found that I could do that. So then I'm kind of working at a deeper level. I'm actually working inside the body. So I would play with it. I would move my awareness around on the inside, and I noticed that I could feel tension and non-tension. So I would hold my awareness or my focused attention on the tension. I like that word, attention, at tension. And I would do the same thing. I would just hold my awareness on it, not trying to do anything to it, not trying to change it. I'm just allowing it to be. And there would be a shift. And then I would do it again and again and again until the tension had released. And at some point, I was actually able to put my awareness inside my head. It took a while, it took months and months to actually be able to get there. And once I got my awareness inside my head, inside my face, there was so much pain and tension in there. It was actually hard to believe how much tension I was holding on the inside that I had not been aware of before. So I love that phrase, God only gives you as much as you can handle at any moment, because that is certainly true along this path. So I was then shown this incredible pain and tension inside my head. And so I would just work on it a little bit at a time, hold my awareness on the pain. I could only keep my awareness on the pain in my left cheek for a couple of seconds, but I would just do it over and over again. And over the months, it has released, and the tension in my skull has relaxed. There's still some in there. I'm working at the level of the bone now. I can put my awareness inside the bone and the roots of the teeth and the palate and releasing tension in there. And some point along this way, I could actually feel the bones in my skull relax into a more aligned state. So this last year, I actually had new x-rays taken from my orthodontist, and I have comparison ones from 2013, and I can actually see in the x-rays, which is really nice to see the physical changes that I knew were happening all along. So my eye sockets have even aligned, and I didn't even know those bones would move. And my jaw, which was way off to the side, is now much more in the center. And my neck, so I've had scoliosis probably since birth, probably since when my right foot was up against my right shin. I think that kind of torqued my whole body, and it's starting to unwind. So my neck is now straighter, and I've grown half an inch, at least half an inch, since the last time I was measured. So I'm now half an inch taller, which to me was really fun, and I think kind of amazing. I didn't know that was possible. So I know now how much power we have inside of us to release dis-ease inside the body. And that's why I'm sharing my story. So I actually have a depth of awareness on the inside that I did not know was possible before. And as within, so without is absolutely true. So now I have a depth of awareness on the outside that I also did not know was possible. So that's why I have a worldview now that I did not know I could have had 5, 10, 15 years ago. So that was the end of the first question. The second one is, what has helped you most along your journey? Well, there have been multiple things that have helped me along my journey. Firstly, the real determination to change. That was very strong in me. I really wanted to change. And one of the questions I started to ask myself was, I know we don't know what we don't know. You know, that's the truth. There's things out there that we don't know. So I would ask myself, well, if what this person is saying is true, what is it I'm not seeing? And that allowed me to open my mind a little bit, because I knew what I was doing wasn't working, and I knew what these spiritual teachers would say. And if it wasn't working for me, they must be seeing something different. So that really helped me along the way. One other thing that really helped along the way was the understanding, which grew along the time frame, the understanding of the law of attraction, not in terms of manifestation, of trying to create something, but just on a day-by-day basis, understanding that the whole of us is a signal, and we are emitting a signal every second of every day, and we're attracting back to our future what we're feeling right now. So I would ask myself during the days, how am I feeling right now? And do I want to feel this same way in the future? And usually the question would be no. I mean, the answer would be no. And so I would do something about it right now, because right now is my signal. And what I realized is that really everything about us is our signal. It's our gender, it's our height, our size, it's our hair, it's our clothes. But once I was able to get my awareness on the inside and feel those incredible forces pulling me out of alignment, that's when I really knew that the biggest part of our signal is the tension that we have held inside of us from all of these years that we've had, everything that's happened in our past that's negative. Excuse me. Everything that's negative is stored inside of us as tension. And that is part of our signal. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's still living inside of us. So I wanted to change my base signal. And I realized that this work, these techniques, were releasing that tension stored inside and changing that base signal. So that really helped me along the way. Also knowing that emotions are just stuck energy. The energy that we stored inside our body that wants to be released, and all we have to do is fully accept it. Just allow it to exist, and it will dissipate. That's happened along the way. And when I began with the EFT, that's accepting the emotions, accepting the words, and then they would release. And then on a deeper level, the physical sensations, just holding awareness on it, allowing it to exist, and it will dissipate. And then at the deeper level, holding my awareness in what I now know is the connective tissue, just holding the attention there and allowing it to dissipate. So yeah, I think those are the main things that help me along the way. Okay, the next question. What do you think of this quote from A Course in Miracles? I am not a body, I am free, I am just as God created me. Well, when I was able to put my awareness inside my body, I absolutely knew without a doubt in my mind that I am not my body, because I can't be my body if I can be in one particular place inside my body and move my awareness around inside my body. I'm not my body. There's no question in my mind. And what I believe now is that the soul is, I believe I'm looking through the connective tissue, and I'm looking through the inner eye through the soul, and the soul is in the connective tissue. And this tension that we hold inside of ourselves is held in the connective tissue, and we can release it. And once we release it, I believe the soul is comfortable in the body. It's happy in the body, and it will stay in the body, I believe, if it's comfortable in the body. And that is where the freedom is. And that is what God created. And we have just stored tension inside of us, this programming inside of us over the years of our life. And that is ours to release. Okay, nearly the last question. Number 4, how do you define miracles, and how do they come about? Well, as I said, I think the soul is in the connective tissue. And when it has these distortions in it, when it has this tension in it, I believe it does not tune into spirit as ideally as it could. I think the signal is distorted. The signal from spirit is distorted through what we call the ego. And so we don't necessarily get what are miracles, because we're not tuning into spirit cleanly, purely. So once we let go of this tension, then I believe we're tuning into spirit. And that's when miracles start to show up. And to me, it's amazing how they show up. I mean, I remember 10, 15 years and beyond that ago, I never had miracles show up. I never had serendipities show up. I remember one time something happened, but in the last 5-10 years, I mean, they're showing up daily. That they're just amazing. The synchronicities that happen, which to me, it just makes life fun. And, I've realized that we are just replaying things from our childhood. So that's part of the law of attraction, right? It's stored inside of us, and we emit that signal and we replay something from our childhood. It's actually easier and easier to see that the further we go through this process. And it's so obvious to me now. So when those things happen from our childhood, because things are stuck inside of us, that's what we're getting. We're getting things again from our childhood. So we want to let those go. Once we let those go, then we are a more pure signal, and we're going to attract more serendipities to us, right? If we have a serendipity and we really enjoy it, that's the signal we're emitting, and we're likely to get more of them. But if we have a serendipity and we feel afraid about it, and I have some friends who've done that in the past, then that's the signal that you're emitting, and you're not likely to get them again, or you're likely to get them and feel fear again. So it's all about the feeling. It's the feeling complex. That's our signal. So if you feel joyous about something, then, and fully joyous, not a false positivity joyous, but a fully joyous in your whole body, that's the signal you're emitting, and you're going to get that back again in your future. Okay, that was the last main question. Did you have any other question you wanted to ask?
There are always more questions. Would you like to go into some examples of those miracles you're speaking of?
Okay, yes, I do. I have multiple examples that I could share, but I will just share the most recent one, because to me it's just the most amazing and the biggest one for me right now in this moment. And it's kind of complex, but yeah, I have my adoption story. I never knew who my father was. My birth father was. My mother knew it could have been one or two people. So a few years ago, I went on to Ancestry.com, and eventually a cousin of my father came onto that site. And so then I knew who my father was at that point. And then just a few weeks ago, Ancestry put up this free thing for a week where you could search all sorts of records. So I found my birth father's death record. So he died in 2013. I clearly was not meant to meet him, but I was put in touch with a friend of his from the last 20 years. And this friend had my father had typed up his whole story, his life story. And this man had it on his old computer that he hadn't turned on for 15 years. And he turned it on just the other day, and he still had all these files and sent them to me like 2 or 3 days ago. So to me, that is amazing that I could get in touch with someone just through the internet, through the ether, and find out all about my father. I mean, who does that? That's just, to me, it just blew my mind. So that's just one, that's just my latest thing that happened.
Yeah, very beautiful. Thank
you. You're welcome.
So
would you like me to share how to get in touch at this point?
You might as well share a little more about your connection and how you connect A Course in Miracles and EFT, because you started, and we might want to know a little more.
Right. So I was in this group at the time when I started tapping, and there was the guy who led our group. He would say every week that it's not about meditation. You don't have to meditate. It's all about feeling your feelings. So he called himself realized. I don't exactly know what he meant by that, but he got there through feeling your feelings. And so, it was during that course of that group that I actually became aware of my feelings and started feeling them. And it gave me that understanding of what I was reading in the Course in Miracles. I read it from a very different perspective once I knew what was happening inside of me, that it almost felt like there was almost two inside of me. There's where I want to focus inside of me, and then there's where I know I should focus inside of me. So almost like spirit guiding to two places inside of me. And when I could bring them together, that would be where the release was. So it's kind of weird to talk in these terms, but it gave me an understanding of what I was reading in the Course in Miracles. And I can't actually remember what it was that I understood more, but I just understood everything I was reading more. In fact, I had a translation of Course in Miracles, and I put that aside because I realized that person was translating from a very different viewpoint than I was, and I wanted the original again. So unless you've got more questions, I can't really answer that more specifically because I can't remember what it was I was reading exactly.
So, is there anything else you'd like to share that I didn't ask in those questions?
I don't think so. I think I got all my story in there. I can share, let me share one thing, because I think it's really useful to understand this, this aspect of life and what we're seeing in society. So before COVID started, I had a group, and we'd meet weekly, and we'd do this EFT, this tapping. But at the beginning of the group, we would all sit in a semicircle and close our eyes, and I would play a series of chimes. And then everyone would open their eyes, and we would share our experience. Now, over time, I realized there's a spectrum of awareness. So on one end of the spectrum are people who only would hear the sounds with their ears. They didn't feel anything anywhere else. They just heard the sounds. And then there are people in the middle who would hear the sounds with their ears, but they would also feel some of the sound vibrations inside certain parts of their body sometimes. And then on the other end of the spectrum are people who would feel the sound vibrations deep inside and throughout their bodies. And what I've realized that this is a spectrum of awareness. And I started out only being able to hear with my ears, right? I didn't have a depth of awareness. And now I can feel sound vibrations. I can feel music throughout my body because I have released enough tension on the inside that the sound vibrations can penetrate my body. But what this means to me, and hopefully to you who are listening, is that now you know, if you can only hear sounds with your ears, if you don't have a great depth of awareness, there is a whole other spectrum of life that you can aim for that has a greater depth of awareness, a greater satisfaction in life. There's so much more to life than you're experiencing right now. And I didn't know that at the time. But also for those empaths, for those people who do feel at a deeper level, also know there are people out there who don't have that depth of awareness. They can't feel what you're feeling. So in society, we see it these days with people who just hear words and they believe it. They believe what they're hearing because they're only hearing the words. But there are also other people who feel those words. They feel if that person is telling the truth or not. They can sense how well that person is breathing. There's all sorts of additional senses that additional information they can get from that person. So we have this big spectrum of awareness in society at large. And I think that's why we're so divided, because we all think we're right. It doesn't matter where we are along this spectrum, because we don't know what we don't know. We all think we know everything and we think we're right. And we don't, because some people are not aware and other people are aware.
So the next thing would be, how do you use this view of the world when connecting with siblings, with other people?
Well, hopefully just the understanding can allow compassion to arise. But this whole journey along the way has been acceptance, right? So if we are conversing with someone who does not have a depth of awareness or who brings up any emotion inside of us, that's our work to do. It's our work to feel those emotions and allow them to be and let them pass through, because that expands our awareness. We can't change the other person, or we can work with it ourselves, and we can work at the level of emotions and the level of feeling to expand our awareness. And when we do, we can have compassion and understanding for the other person. Doesn't mean they're right, because we always think we're right. But we also know that they think they're right because they don't know any better. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, it does.
Good.
Yeah, then I guess we'll wrap it up. So how can one reach you if one wants to contact you?
Okay, yeah, there's multiple ways. I did write a book. I wrote all of this down in a book. It's called A Pathway to Insight, and you can get it on Amazon or ask your local store to order it. And I have a YouTube channel that has some demonstration videos, and it also has the x-rays on there. And there's a demonstration about EFT, and there's a demonstration about feeling your feelings, because it sounds simple. It's not as easy as it sounds. And I have a website, annhince.com, and the videos are on there. I mean, the x-rays are on there too. And I have a public Facebook page that I love to write things. I love to explain things on there, and happy to interact with anyone on there.
Perfect. I will give me the links and I can put them in the show notes.
Sure.
Okay, thank you for being here, Ann. It was so wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
It's an amazing journey to go through so many feelings. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, they're just stuck inside of us.
Okay. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for everything. And please review the podcast wherever you're listening to it. Spread the word so that more people get to know it. And thank you so much once again. Bye-bye.
Bye.